Good morning. Today is Thursday. It is the 11th day of Cheshvan, and today is the Yortzeit of Rachel Imenu. Rachel Imenu, Mother Rachel, who is waiting. All Am Yisrael is relying on her to take us out from Golus. So it's a very, very special day. And today we are finishing the 26th chapter of Igeret HaKodesh, very long one. At least we learned it in pieces over a week. And it talks about the way the Torah is going to be studied in the coming of Moshiach very soon, amen. And it is really a good opportunity to mention and to remind everyone to subscribe and share this videos, because this is what brings Moshiach, the learning of these teachings of the Tanya and the Chassidus, the inner part of the Torah, which is what brings Moshiach, as we'll see in what we're learning in the end of this chapter. So in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe quoted, apart from the Zohar, the Holy Zohar, which is the Kabbalah, and it really illustrated the fact that we need the teaching of Hasidus in order to understand the Zohar properly, to understand the Kabbalah. You do need to have the learning of the Hasidus to understand it properly. And this part of the Zohar talks about the learning of the Torah, that in the time of Moshiach, we're not going to need to study this part of the Torah, which is called a mixture of good and bad. And we ask the question, what does that mean? How could he say such a thing about the Torah? And Alter Rebbe explained in length that when we say that the revealed part of the Torah is mixture of good and bad, not, God forbid, to say that the Torah is a mixture of good and bad, but that the Torah deals with things that are bad and things that are good, things deals with situations like someone hurting somebody else, or certain animals that are not kosher, and so on. That was one explanation. And then he went even deeper to explain that dealing with, to elevate and refine the good from the bad, is talking about the godly sparks that fell down into this physical world, as we explained yesterday, that by us humans understanding and dealing with the questions and dealing with the Yetzer Hara, with the challenges that we have, and bringing clarity and refining and understanding, we are elevating those godly sparks that are hidden and that were not understood, and now it's understood. This is the dealing with the Tov V'Ra, Eitz Hadas, Tov V'Ra. But when Moshiach will come, then it's going to be a whole different level of learning. When Moshiach will come and will deal more with the essential light of Hashem and to create more greater lights of Hashem. In other words, what we do when we do mitzvahs and we study Torah, there's two things that is accomplished. One thing is, it's called birurim. Birurim means refining, elevating, separating good from evil, and taking out the good. That's called birurim. Whenever you do, you take an apple and you make a bracha, and you eat it in the right way. You elevate the spark, and you separate it. You're using the internet. The internet is a beautiful thing, can be used, but can be used unfortunately in very bad things. And when you're using this and you're doing good things and you're studying Torah and you're connecting to God through this, that elevates you. That brings you a better, it elevates the godly sparks, which is in these physical things. And so this is true regarding the Torah, that this is one way of what we accomplish by learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. The second thing what we do, it's called leyached yichudim. What is leyached yichudim? That means to bring unifications. When there is a unification of the higher source of light with the lower, it brings birth. Just like a union between man and woman brings birth, creates something. We're talking about bringing unification in the higher worlds. And when you study the Torah in that way, you reach to bring higher godly revelation in this world. And that is the main thing what we're going to do when the Moshiach comes. We're going to study the Torah in that way. So let's look inside what the Alter Rebbe says today. There's the Alter Rebbe, Avol, Betzeis HaShechina miklipas noiga, and the Shechina will emerge from the klipas. When the Shechina, the divine presence, will go out. Acha sheyushlam birur anitzoitzois veyufrad hara me'atoiv. After we will finish the refining and elevating the extraction of the godly sparks that we explained. Veyufrad hara me'atoiv, that evil will be separated from the good. Veispardu kol poyalei oven, and all the workers of evil will be dispersed. That's what's going to be when Mashiach comes. Veloi shalta ilana de toiv v'ra, and the tree of good and of evil, meaning the mixture of good and evil, will no longer be dominant. Why? Betzeis atoiv mimeno. It will no longer be dominant because the good will depart from it. The only reason why the other side has power today is because it has a mixture of good in it. Just like they say, every lie has to have a little bit of truth to it in order to be able to sustain. If you tell a lie, you have to tell some truth, otherwise it disappears if it's really a lie. So the evil in the world exists only because there is some good. And when we study Torah, when we do mitzvahs, and when we elevate, we refine, and we extract the good from the bad, that no longer has its existence. So Azai then says, Lo yehei esek ha-Torah ve'ha-mitzvahs levarer birurim. Then people will engage in study of Torah, not in order to extract the sparks, because all the sparks will be already extracted. But what will be the study of the Torah then? Kim leyached yichudim elyonim yaisa. In order to bring about bringing the yichudim, the unions, the marriage of the spheres, more in a higher level. Lehamshich oyros elyonim yaisa shelamayla me'atzilus. In order to call forth more sublime lights, higher lights, transcending Atzilus, even higher than Atzilus. We explained that Atzilus is the highest of the four spiritual worlds. And this, what we're bringing, the light and the coming of Mashiach, will be even higher than Atzilus. As the Arizal of blessed memory writes, and this will be done al yedei pnimius ha-Torah. This was accomplished by Minus, the pnimius, the inner part of the Torah, the more mystical part, the esoteric dimensions of the Torah, lekayem a mitzvahs bekavonos elyonos, to fulfill the mitzvahs with more lofty mystical devotion and concentration, shemechavnos leoros elyonim, because they are directed to draw down the higher spiritual lights. Why? Ki sheirish ha-mitzvah u'lemailo be'ein sof baruch hu. Because the roots of the commandments are very high, exceedingly high, in the blessed Ein Sof, the level of which is higher than Atzilus. Now the Alter Rebbe says in parentheses, U'mashe Amru Razal, what our sages say, the mitzvah is betelos la'asid lavai, that the mitzvahs, the commandments, will be nullified, will be cancelled in the future. This is the Gemara talks about the law regarding shatnez. The laws of shatnez. It says when you have a garment, you're not supposed to have wool and linen in the same garment. That's why when you buy a suit, you have to make sure you bring it to it's called a shatnez laboratory, to make sure that there is no linen. Sometimes they have in the lining on the suit, sometimes they have linen they put. If the suit is wool and you have linen, then it's a problem. They have to take it out, whatever. So the Talmud, the Gemara, talks about the question whether the shrouds of a dead person, are you allowed to do it with a mixture of wool and linen? And it says, yes, it's okay to do it. The question that is asked, why? Because a dead person is not obligated in the mitzvahs. Once a person dies, he's no longer obligated to do the mitzvah. So he's allowed to wear a shroud which has the mixture of wool and linen. So the Gemara asks why, the Tosfos, I think, asked, why then, what happens when there will be Techiyas HaMeisim? Will be the resurrection of the dead. So the dead people will rise. And if a person is buried with shrouds that has mixture of wool and linen, so as soon as he rises, it'll be a problem. He'll have something which is not allowed to wear. And the answer that Tosfos says that by Techiyas HaMeisim, La'asid Lava, in the future, the mitzvahs will be no longer nullified, and we'll explain what does that mean. I mean, we know this is the mitzvahs of God, commandments is everlasting. So we'll explain it. Let's see first what Alter Rebbe explains here. So he says, when will the mitzvahs when will the commandments be abrogated? This is Hainu b'Tchiyas HaMeisim. Only in the second stage after Moshiach comes, by the resurrection of the dead. Because when Moshiach comes, it will be two stages. It will be first Moshiach comes, the Beis HaMikdash will be all of the good things what the Torah says. Then later on will be the resurrection of the dead. But in the time, the days of Moshiach, before the resurrection of the dead, ein betelim. The mitzvahs will not be abrogated. So, meaning that there will be mitzvahs even then, even after Mashiach comes. However, there's explanation also. What does it mean mitzvahs will stop? Even after all, this is the will of Hashem. How could you say that the mitzvahs all of a sudden will stop? We know that those commandments never stop. So there's explanation, Chassidus. What it means is that a mitzvah means a commandment. A mitzvah that God commands us. What it would say that by Techiyas HaMeisim the commandment will stop, it means that it will no longer be a commandment. People will do this because they're going to be one with Hashem and they're going to be doing automatically. Like you don't have to tell somebody, command you to breathe. I breathe today because I need to breathe, I need to live. So we'll do the same thing when Moshiach comes, but Chiyas HaMeisim will do everything in a natural way. It will be in a natural thing. This is the will of Hashem, and we do it automatically. So that's what it means, that the mitzvahs, the commandment of it, that will no longer be. However, in any case, before Chiyas HaMeisim will be commandments, and we'll be studying the Torah. It says, "V'lachein, therefore, yegam iker eisek haTorah, gam kein b'pnimiyus hamitzvos." So the main thing of involving and studying the Torah will be mainly with the inner meaning, the mystical depth of the mitzvahs, with tameim and historim, and the inner explanation, the reasoning, the hidden reasons behind the mitzvahs. Aval haniglois, but the revealed part of the Torah, yegluim v'yeduyim echol ish Yisrael b'yediyat chila b'li shichecha. The revealed part, the simple part of the Torah, will be known to everyone without forgetfulness. What does it mean without forgetfulness? It says in Chassidus, forgetfulness comes from the other side. I mean, something that is you really care for, you don't forget. You don't forget your name. Some people have a problem with that also. That's a different subject. But it means that you will be connected to the Torah so much that there will be no forgetfulness. Ve'ein tzarich lasek b'hem. That's how when Mashiach comes, there will not be need to deal with the revealed part of the Torah so much. Elo le'erev rav, except the erev rav. There will be some individuals that they are not having the merit to taste from the tree of life, the inner part of Torah. They will have to deal with the literal part of the Torah, the good and the bad, because even when Mashiach comes, it says there will be some things that will need to struggle with the other side. He says, the Erev Rav shelo yizku lemita meilone dechaya. They will not have merited to taste from the tree of life, shupnimiyus haTorah ve'amitzvos, which is the inner dimension of the Torah and the mitzvahs. Ve'tzrichim lasek b'Torah b'Mishnah lehatish koyach hasitra achra davuk b'hem al yidei yisek haTorah. And they will need to engage in the Torah and the Mishnah in order to weaken the power of the Sitra Achra by way of being occupied with the Torah studies. That means that Erev Rav, they will have to struggle with it, that the evil shouldn't control them, shouldn't dominate them, to make them sin. As it says, it says the sinner at the age of 100 will be cursed, which means that there will be sinners of the mixed multitude. So that's one reason why they will need to deal, the Erev Rav will need to deal with the revealed part of the Torah that deals with the good and the bad. וגם למעשה יהיו צריכים לפרוטי הלכות איסור וטומאה יסע מישראל. In addition, it says they will also need to deal with the laws of forbidden and impurities more than the average Jew. שלא ירא להם פסול וטומאה ואסור. Because the Jew will not have a problem with sin. Why? It says because it says that a tzaddik does not happen. There shall not befall any sin to the righteous. Hashem protects the tzaddik not to commit any sins. So therefore, those things, the Jew that will be connected with the tree of life, the average Jew will not need to deal with this. Impurities and so on. Another thing it says, another reason why the Zohar says that when Moshiach comes, there will be no need to learn the laws of the good and the kosher, the not kosher, and so on. V'gam efshar, it's also possible. V'koroi v'adover, indeed it is probable. Sheyedu mepnimius atayro kol gufei atayro niglis. That they will know from learning the Kabbalah, from learning the inner part of the Torah. From this, they will know all the revealed part of the Torah. Because all the revealed part of the Torah, they have roots in the spiritual parts. Things that we learn in the Torah today, for example, in the Gemara, talks about Shnai Meichzim Betalos. There's the laws in the tractate Baba Metzia that says when there are two people who hold a garment, each one says, this one says, this is mine, and the other one says, this is mine. What is the law? What are you supposed to do? So the same law that we learn here also has in the spiritual sense. Shnai Meichzim Betalos is talking about the two powers, two sides that hold that the object, and the good side wants to take it, the evil side wants to take it, and so on and so forth. Everything in the Torah has also a deeper dimension. And when Mashiach comes, that we will know the deeper dimension, automatically we'll also know the physical and the literal meaning of those laws. Just like Avraham Avinu of blessed memory. He knew the whole Torah, but he knew it from the spiritual dimension. So Avraham Avinu knew about the tefillin, but he didn't wear physical tefillin. He knew the spiritual meaning of the tefillin, and so on and so forth. That's why there will be no need to deal with us, to be occupied with this part of the Torah so much at all. But in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, even though the Talmidei Chachamim, they had their parnasa and so on, as we explained, but they still needed to deal with, to be involved with these laws. Not only for their practical application, but because this is the main purpose of the divine service. Until Mashiach comes, the main purpose is to weaken the evil side. To weaken the power of the Sivt Achra, and to elevate the sparks of holiness through studying Torah and doing the worship of Hashem, as explained elsewhere. And the Alter Rebbe concludes, after these words and these truth, it will be clearly understood. The Raya Mehemne, the Zoya that we quoted earlier, the Masha Omar Ilona de Toivera, which spoke of the tree of good and evil, the prohibition and permissions. What it means to say is klipis noiga sheu iker olam hazeh. The mixture of good and evil is talking about the klipas noiga, which is the mainstay of this world. As it says in Etzchaim, V'dai Lamevin, and this is suffice to the discerning. So again, this is the end of chapter 26. It gives us another dimension and explanation and understanding what will be in the coming of Moshiach. And it says that the Baal Shem Tov says that when these teachings are spread, we are now tasting a bit of the food that Hashem will give us in the coming of Moshiach. This is the inner part of the Torah. This is the mystical part of the Torah. Just like before Shabbos, there is a mitzvah to taste from the food of Shabbos. So too, we are now tasting the spiritual food, and this itself makes us closer, brings us closer to Mashiach. Thank you for joining. Any questions?